Hey gang, I was finally able to get in, although there was a catch. Given the drama and anxiety of the last week of the 318 launch, I thought it might be a good time to touch back on why I think this will be a show me year, especially now that I have some context to go behind that statement. In the same vein, I thought it might be fun to engage in some wild speculation about engineering gameplay, which kind of got lost in the sauce in the last week, and why I think it might prove to be one of the most important game loops to date. So with that said, let's get this. First off, I won't bury the lead on this one. Apparently, and according to Xylo, Cameral, and a few others, one of the main causes of people being locked out might actually be related to how large their accounts are and how many ships they have. As you've probably seen from previous episodes, it's not really a big secret that I'm a whale. However, I do have two alt accounts that I use for the occasional recording of B-roll and a couple other little side projects I have going on. While the whale account is still locked out behind 19K errors, the two little alts were able to jump right in, like almost immediately. So Xylo and gang might be on to something, although it's important to note that Knight 55 was actually able to jump in with his two accounts, and both of those accounts are bigger than mine. So who knows? There's more going on to this than we know about, so hopefully they get fixed this week. With that said, let's go on to the topic of this vid, which is going to be, let's start with engineering. They just ran out an ISC on this last week, and it's kind of a shame that this episode dropped when it did, because I think engineering will probably be one of the most important for this game moving forward. So what do I mean by that? Star Citizen and games like Star Citizen will always be able to pull in players who want to fly in a space sim. It'll always be able to draw in PvP players and players who want to play a first-person shooter, so that was never in question. So the big question is, can Star Citizen in a game like Star Citizen have broader appeal? Can appeal to players outside of those specific genres? And that's where engineering comes in. Engineering will appeal to a player base we don't really have in the verse right now. So it's people who aren't really interested in flying or fighting, but love to tinker on things. The kinds of people who are playing Space Engineers, which I haven't played, so I don't know if that's an accurate statement or not, or just resource management games. There really isn't a loop for them in the verse right now, so Star Citizen likely isn't even on their radar. They probably heard about it and said, oh, it's a flight sim game, I don't want to play that. But engineering, if done right, can change that. From the show, it looks like the loop will focus on three broad categories and three broad roles. So let's get into that. So for the categories of things that engineers will work on, there's wear and tear, overheating, and malfunctions. And I put them in that order because I think that's largely how things will play out. Wear and tear and overheating will likely go hand in hand, with one contributing to the other. If you overheat your components, they're going to wear out faster. If you have worn down components, they're going to overheat faster. You get the idea. Malfunctions are kind of in the game right now, but once engineering comes out, the health pool that dictates when a malfunction happens will not only be affected by physical damage from another ship's weapons or EMPs, but also from overheating and wear and tear. Proactive engineers can ensure that the chances of something going wrong are lessened and that the health pool is as high as possible, while reactive engineers can fix things when they eventually do hit the end of their warranty. And that brings us to the three types of engineers CIG has settled on as archetypes. The first of these, in my view, is the mechanic. In a sense, I think all of us, everyone who plays this game, will need to have a little bit of mechanic in them. But this is especially true if you're in a small ship, say one with a crew of 5 or less. Of the roles, there's the reactive one. Mechanics are the ones that, when the ship is on fire, they're the ones running around and putting things out and fixing them so they work, or at least so they don't catch fire again. Like I said, every ship, even down to a solo fighter, will at least need some semblance of this role. A slight step up that ladder is the one that I consider a true engineer role, where the mechanic role could be anything from a professional mechanic to that one friend you have that dinks around with his car on the weekends. The tuner is more of a proactive role. Again, I think on a medium and small ship, your tuner and your mechanic will probably be the same person, but in terms of role, they're really pretty different. Where the mechanic is fixing things that are broken or about to break, the tuner is preparing things to ensure they don't break in the first place. This is a bit more specialized than the mechanic, and I think the tuners of the verse will be the people that actually dive into this loop head first and treat it as their primary concern, their primary loop. Finally, there's the manager, and I see this role as kind of the Scotty of a bigger ship. Think a vessel with a crew of 10 or more people. Likely these people are pretty experienced mechanics and tuners themselves, but also relatively good at the HR aspect of running a small group. Using their knowledge, these managers are the ones organizing the mechanics and tuners of the ship to make sure the ship is running as efficiently as possible. Again, I see this as a massive step for this game. These three roles will draw in a whole new player base and likely grow the community beyond its current niche. And that's the key to really ensuring this game is successful. And speaking of successful, on to the bigger elephant in the room. 318 dropped last week and shattered. As promised, the PU is in a rough state at the moment, but my couple playthroughs in the last day or so weren't as bad as I was expecting once I found this workaround of getting in with my smaller accounts. With that said, this might be a good time to revisit the time that I said that I thought that 2023 would be a show me year. What I meant by this wasn't meant to be anything negative or demanding, only that with PES and server meshing, CIG can't wave their hands anymore and point to some distant promised tech to move the project from cool tech demo to what we and they envision as the finished viable product. One of the problems with this grand design is exactly why no one has tried to make a game like this before. It just takes a ton of money, time, unwavering ambition, and a near single-minded desire to get the thing done and not walk away from it. If this project had been backed by a production company, the plug would have been pulled years ago. Either that or we would have gotten an EVE or Elite Dangerous clone that they would have called good at that point. The only way this game will ever get made, the underlying technology and breakthroughs to happen, is, for lack of a better term, fanatical crowdfunding. And here we are. So I'm hoping in a week or so the big issues are hammered out and we're all just laughing about the usual bugs of falling through the surface of a planet or getting killed by stepping on some piece of geometry wrong. I'm betting on that. But the kinds of issues we've seen with 318 are exactly what I mean by a show me year. This isn't a theory anymore. It's not some distant Jesus tech we've been hoping for. It's arrived. This is the tech that will make or break the game. This is the tech that will make it possible or impossible to make the rest of the game. So can CIG pull it off? That's what we're about to find out. I do think that server meshing is an easier solve than persistent NA streaming. Keeping track of all items everywhere all the time is a hell of a big task. It's crazy, but here we are. If CIG can pull this off, it'll revolutionize gaming, and I'm not just being hyperbolic there. If they can combine it with a massively multiplayer universe, you'll see a load of clones pop up out of the woodwork in the next 5 years or so. The amount of time it takes the big boys to reverse engineer everything and make their own versions of it. There's a lot of ifs in those statements, though, and this year, and likely the next, will be when CIG sees if they can actually pull it off. I'm betting that they will, as evidenced by my own whale account. I want to see this thing happen, but I'm also not unaware that there's a very good reason why no one has tried to do this combination of things before in a game, at least not at the fidelity that Star Citizen is running at. To end on an optimistic note, I think PES is the real blocker. A system that remembers everything everywhere and in what condition is quite a bit more complicated than server meshing, which is comparatively well understood and has been demonstrated in several games over the years. And that's all I have for this one, gang. Let's hear your thoughts. Do you think that engineering is as big a deal as I do? Do you have a friend or two out there that wouldn't play Star Citizen as it is now, but might jump on board when the engineering game loop comes online? Because I know I do. I have a couple friends out there that I haven't even told about this game that I think would enjoy the engineering game loops, but they wouldn't necessarily enjoy the flying around or the fighting. They would love to be the tinkerer on a ship, though. And do you think I'm right about this being a show me year? Or do you think that I'm being overblown and that it's just one more year of development, no different from any other? Let me know in the comments down below, and catch me next time.